Welcome back, everybody, to Film Music Focus. Today's episode, we're going to discuss all kinds of really cool, fun things with trumpet extraordinaire Robert Schaer. Rob's a friend, and super happy to have him on. He's an incredible player. He's a great musician overall, and he's a dude. He's a guy you can hang with. It's super cool. So, Rob, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Justin. I'm happy to be here, man. It'll be fun.
So, we met at the Henry Mancini Institute back in 2003 or 4 or something like that?
2004.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Which no longer exists. Well, not in the form that it used to exist out here at UCLA. Oh, I guess we better get that out of the way. Just full disclosure, everybody, Mr. Schaer is a Trojan. And, not a Bruin, but we still love him. Yeah, man, so I can't believe it's been that long. Like 16 years.
Yeah. It's been crazy. Does everybody know what the Mancini Institute is or was? So it was like the summer program, right?
Yeah.
And you were there as a composer in residence, I think.
Yeah.
And I was there as a trumpet player. And, it was I think 4-week program. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I think originally started with Jeannie Mancini and Jack Elliott. When I was there and you were there, I think, Pat Williams was kind of running the show along with a few other people.
Yeah.
Forgive anybody I left out. But it was an amazing program and certainly was a stepping stone for so many musicians in Los Angeles that congregated there in the summer and then went on to become, players, composers, orchestrators, arrangers in town. It was an amazing program, and I'm sorry that it's not around anymore, but it does exist as a full-year program at, I think, the University of Miami.
It was Shelly,
who I'm a big fan of, Shelly Berg. He took the program down there, and I think it's a 1-year in residency through the University of Miami. So, last I heard.
Some of the listeners might not know the name Shelly Berg. Probably many of them do, but Shelly, for any of you that don't know who he is, I think a great way of summing up Shelly's musicianship is that he's one of those few guys that's just like making love to the piano anytime he plays. I mean, just the way that he embodies the spirit of musicianship anytime he's on the keys is just it's incredible.
So he was my jazz, my big band professor at he ran the jazz department at USC when I was there, and I played in the big band even though I was a classical major. He luckily allowed a few of us to play, and my big quote about Shelly all the time is that I would learn more from him in 10 minutes than I would learn from, another class the entire year. He just, every single day, he just spouted beautiful knowledge. It was just amazing, really amazing stuff. And I felt honored to just be one of his pupils for even just a small period of time. So, he was a big influence on me.
So, for all you out there listening, Rob is one of, in my view, and certainly not just mine, a lot of people in town, is one of the great crossover players. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that later, kind of how you got into that, which you don't just get into it, right? I mean, that's not a fair way of saying it. I mean, you have to work your ass off, and you have to really keep it to the floor and over and over and over and over every day. So let's back up. Let's back up all the way to kind of some of your earliest memories in music. We all kind of have one or two of those, like how we fell in love with the art form. And what was it for you? I mean, can you remember?
Oh, man, as cheesy as it sounds. So my father was my high school band director, which is not the cheesy part. He was obviously a big influence on me. And but I remember going to see drum corps shows in Florida. Man. And I just thought it exposed me to so much different music, classical music, and jazz music. Blue Devils were playing jazz, then Garfield Cadets were playing at that point. Well, now they were the Cadets of Bergen County, I think, by that point. Anyways, every corps had their own thing. Phantom Regiment was very big in like Shostakovich and all kinds of stuff. And so it influenced me and it brought my ears actually to orchestral music, funny enough. So that was sort of the first thing that I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then, you know, you start diving into a record collection that your father may have, and that leads you to the next thing and the next thing. And then what I like to tell people, you know, they ask me, well, why'd you choose trumpet? Because my father was a percussionist. And my big joke is that, you know, when I would look at his marching band, I would see the trumpet players standing in the front and the percussion standing in the back. And I was like, I want to stand in the front. So I chose trumpet. You know, and that was kind of the rest is history. But so that was a big influence for me. And then, luckily, you know, having my father as a music educator, he just exposed me to so many different things. We would listen to jazz, we would listen to, you know, classical music, we would listen to commercial music, you know. At that time, we were still seeing at least, I think, reruns of the Carson, the Tonight Show. You know, Johnny Carson. He'd let me stay up a little later to get to see Doc Severinsen play. You know, and stuff like that. So but I mean, there's so many, I guess, now at this point.
Yeah, I mean, your trumpet story is funny. It brought back a visceral memory of a similar question. You know, why did you choose trumpet? And my answer, although I've given it up many years ago. My answer to this day still is, and was at the time, because it only had 3 buttons. Not valves, not even valves. I didn't even know they were valves at the time. They looked like buttons. Yeah. And I said it was only 3 buttons. It can't be that difficult, right? I mean, come on. Well, the joke's on us.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot of people, you know, it's funny, you go to see a dentist or something, be like, oh, I used to play trumpet, you know? It's like everybody used to kind of play, you know, trumpet or whatever, but the trumpet can win, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, for a lot of the folks out there listening that might not have a music background or aren't too familiar with just kind of the lexicon of the makeup of the brass section, you know, you hear that player XYZ plays trumpet. Well, that can mean a whole lot of things. I mean, even just looking over there, you got your flugel, you got your C trumpet, it looks like.
Flugel, C, piccolo, E flat D. Just kind of hanging.
Well, there it is, right there. That's kind of where I'm going with this. You know, playing trumpet, if you're a professional, certainly a professional in Hollywood, knowing, not just in Hollywood, you know, you got to know how to play all the horns in a major orchestra, but out here, it's a little bit more of, you need super at-the-ready knowledge of transposition, literally playing in one key in an instrument and transposing it into a different key because of the way that the arranger, the orchestra, the composer may have written it in. In short, playing trumpet when you're a pro means you're playing a whole heck of a lot of trumpets. And, you know, I've always been a fan, as you know, of the B-flat, the big dog. Though, why don't you talk a little bit about kind of some of your earlier memories on when you realized that if you really wanted to, you know, to dig it and really do it, you had to know how to play, be able to play on multiple horns.
Oh yeah, let's see. That's a good question. You know, it probably wasn't until I got to college, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. When I was in high school, I don't know why, but I went on this audition at Disney World in Orlando, Florida, which was about a 2-hour drive from my hometown. They have auditions every year to fill toy soldiers in the Christmas parade. So they had the long fanfare trumpets, and my father had a few students who were doing it, Kenny Boyd, and I ended up meeting a lot of other people there. But and those people were big influences for me in my small town. And then I found out they're doing this really cool gig at Disney. Well, I'm in high school. I'm going to go take the audition. And so I get there and I end up getting the job, and then I get immersed in like the Disney musician culture in Orlando, Florida, which, if you don't know, is ridiculous. The musicians there are incredible.
Future Core, man.
Yeah, Future Core was still around when I was there. Right. Now let's see. There's the World Band or the Magic or the King Kids. No, let's see. The Kids of the Kingdom was at MGM, I think, when I was there. Yeah. And there was the World Band and Magic. Anyways, ton of music, ton of different players, and we'd be backstage, and you just. Not just hearing toy soldier trumpet players warm up, but hearing the real pros, you know, who had been doing this for a long time, playing and warming up, was unbelievable. So anyway, so I did that, and then that led me to go to college in Orlando, because I thought, well, if I can get this job and I can have this seasonally, you know, for Christmas and maybe, you know, do the Easter parade and stuff like that, well, I'm going to go to college at University of Central Florida. So I went there, and that's where I met John Almeida, who was my trumpet teacher there. Yeah. Big influence on me, and he's the one who first started going, okay, because at that point I only had a B-flat trumpet. That's it. I didn't own any other trumpets. And he said, I might have had a piccolo, I think, because one of my father's buddies was unloading one at some point. Anyways, That's all I really had. I didn't know orchestral literature. I didn't know anything. I kind of knew music, and I knew the B-flat trumpet. And he said, look, you at some point in your life, you're going to start getting phone calls for work, and you want to be able to say yes. And when that happens, you have to have all the tools to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's when, that meant a lot of things. That not only meant the trumpets, the B-flat, the C, the flugelhorn, the piccolo, but it also meant, musically, I had to be prepared to play anything.
Yeah.
And so it was such great advice, and I continue to pass that on to my students today. But that's really the first time I really moved from, I've realized, okay, I need more than a B-flat trumpet here if I want to do this for a living.
Yeah. It's, now seeing how you've evolved in your career, not only as a musician who I work with professionally, but as a friend, it's really cool to see from afar, observing some of the in and out evolution that you've gone through over the last, we graduated around 2003, 2004 from university. Mm-hmm. And what might seem like a very, very quick 16 years in Los Angeles, each of those 24-hour days come with a lot of hard work. And oftentimes, as you might be on a session for Family Guy, or you may have come out with a recording date with John Williams, and you may be practicing later that night for something that you've got with the Los Angeles Philharmonic the next day. And I, just to kind of back up, it's one of the things that I didn't eloquently do at the beginning of the program. For those of you that don't know, Rob is the principal trumpet of the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra. He plays on a huge amount of record dates, TV shows, movies, and you can just kind of, maybe we can, in a moment, what are some of your favorite memories, even in the last few years, that might just kind of stick out? But I bring all this up because you don't know where your career is going to go, right? You might have a goal in mind or a set of goals, and there might be a million ways to get to that end of the yellow brick road, so to speak. And you just never know what's going to be thrown at you. And to your point, being prepared for whatever does come at you is a huge element that young musicians, as well as seasoned veterans, constantly have to remind themselves of. Because if you get that call and you might not be ready,
yeah, Well, that's kind of, that I think of two things. So first of all, I think about my John Almeida, my trumpet teacher again, who said, yes, you got to be able to say yes to everything. But then there's kind of a quote in Los Angeles, which is, you want to be discovered, but not found out. Right. So that's kind of a big, in the recording world is like, we all have our strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. Even the best of the best have things they're constantly working on. And every once in a while it gets put in front of you on the music stand, and you just do the best you can. That's all you can do at that point. Yeah. But that's what I think about when I hear you say,
Favorite memories, last 10 years, what kind of sticks out?
Okay. So I've been lucky enough to start working with John Williams the last few years. Mm-hmm. I'm basically just a sub in his orchestra. I fill in for when the main four trumpet players can't be there. So John Lewis is the principal, yep. Unbelievable LA trumpet player, and Barry Perkins is their second trumpet, and Dan Rosenboom and Dave Washburn. All incredible players, all principal players of orchestras and around Southern California, and Dan Rosenboom has his own band. He's putting out a record every other month, it seems like. He's an incredible
and a
jazz musician.
Former Bruin as well, huh?
Unfortunately, he's a Bruin, yeah. So I've been lucky enough to get in there. If Dave Washburn's away, he's sought after around the world to play the Brandenburg Concerto. It's a very difficult thing for trumpet players to play. It's very specialized, and to really do it right, there's only a handful of players in the world who can do it, and Dave's one of them. So every once in a while, he'd get a conflict, and I'd get to come in there and play some fourth trumpet. So getting to play with John Williams at the Hollywood Bowl live, for 18,000 people is unlike, anything. You can't describe it. To hear that many people scream when you start playing the theme to Indiana Jones or E.T. or Superman, and it's pretty incredible stuff. So working for John, doing Mandalorian with Ludwig has been really cool. We had no idea what we were doing at the time. We just knew it was a super secret project, and the music was really cool because Ludwig's a great composer. And so that was cool. Other than that, I think it's just the variety for me has been, I've been really lucky to do kind of a variety of things. And, sometimes a live performance has been my favorite thing that happened this month. And then sometimes it's, a small recording session one-on-one with a composer at their studio was my favorite thing to do.
Yeah.
So it's just the variety that you get in Los Angeles is it's unlike any other place probably in the world. So
it's incredible to see and as a result of as many opportunities as there are here in town, as a musician recording whatever musicians are tasked with recording, whether it's film or television or records, or they're doing just as a voice artist, singing or just regular talking via whatever it is. The idea of sound being recorded for projects XYZ, because there's so much opportunity here. Just to kind of go back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, that's one of the drivers in why you really have to have your suitcase squared away. Because if you don't, you're obviously limiting the amount of opportunities that you can touch as a musician.
Right.
Now you've been on the Hollywood Bowl stage as a performer far longer than you've been the principal trumpet of the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra. However, there's a difference there, I imagine, like the mindset of all of a sudden being that principal player in an orchestra that plays in one of the most famous venues on the planet. So what's that evolution been like for you? You've had an amazing opportunity to perform at the Bowl, given your young age, pretty regularly.
Yeah. And getting to start and sub there early on was incredible. And, sitting next to great Los Angeles players, John is in the orchestra, John Lewis, and Rob Freer is also in the orchestra, and both are currently. And then the position I took over was Warren Looning. He was the kind of co-principal trumpet there, and unfortunately he passed away from cancer. But I got to work with them, all of them as a sub, and I mean, all the great LA players would be there. Rick Baptist and let's see, Wayne Bergeron was there. I mean, he was like kind of their first call sub, and still is. Has been for probably 20 years. Great Los Angeles trumpet player, and let's see, so Rick and Wayne and Dan Fernero. And who else? There's been so many people: John Fumo, Kai Palmer. So many great trumpet players who've been through there that continue to play there. But yeah, I guess it is a little bit different when you kind of become the guy, or the person, the lead player, and you get to work with management a little bit more behind the scenes. You have a little bit more of a relationship with the conductor, whomever it is. We have a lot of guest conductors depending on which act is coming in for, that week. But our main maestro is Thomas Wilkins. And so we get to work with him. And so the pressure is, I don't know about performing pressure being any different. It's kind of the same. I think I was probably more nervous when I was subbing, just being around these iconic players all the time. I was super nervous. And then, I guess it's still the case. I mean, we all just really respect each other so much. But that gig is so much fun because we'll play, sometimes we'll play some pretty standard orchestral literature. And then the second half of the concert, we're backing some big artist. We played with, Earth, Wind & Fire, Chicago, Cyndi Lauper, whatever. Or we're doing a movie concert with CineConcerts. We're doing Harry Potter, or, what you guys do so many, I don't even know what you do anymore. But
I can't keep track.
But it's awesome. I mean, we get to do all these cool things there and meet and play with all of these great artists. It's a blast.
You mentioned Warren Looning, so let's kind of pivot a little bit. For those that don't know Warren Looning by name, if any of you have heard any film music over the last 20 to 30 years, well, 40 years even with Warren.
40, yeah.
He was one of the most respected players in all of town in Los Angeles, and for a lot of reasons. Not only because he was a great player, he was a great guy, but he was a very, very practical musician, and he also had the ability to cross over into a wide range of styles and be able to do them well. I mean, he wasn't playing, to your point, the Brandenburg Concerto in the same way that he might play a jazz tune. But there aren't really any players, I mean, let's be honest, there aren't really any players in the world that can be perfect at one end of the extreme and perfect on the other end of the extreme. I think it's probably a tall tale, but there's a huge middle ground where you can become an expert at. And I always felt growing up listening to Warren and finally having a chance to meet him when I was, I think, 15 on one of Silvestri's scoring dates, and then again on a Goldsmith scoring date, was for me an eye-opening experience in person because of how kind he was. But all those years prior, knowing who he was, listening to his records, was an ear-opening experience because of how he approached musicianship. Now, whether or not it was his tone, which was like velvet, as you know, or his ability to turn around, play jazz and classical very well back-to-back in a session. So, and I say this with the utmost respect to Warren, and I say this beyond our friendship. I mean this as a professional and as a friend. I see and hear a lot of Warren's musicianship and his sound in your playing. And not to say you sound like Warren. Nobody sounds like Warren, but that ability to cross over well. You have a really gorgeous velvet tone, and those are the kinds of things that for composers who are arrangers or orchestrators, conductors that appreciate the ability to kind of go back and forth, which you need to in LA. It's such a pleasure to be able to see you do it. We haven't worked as much as perhaps we'd like to in the last few years. Hopefully that'll change in the next few years. But it's cool seeing what you're doing, man. And so I make that comparison in the highest complimentary way, and it's cool to see what you're doing, man.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's hard for me to accept. There never will be another Warren Looning. He is, he was such a natural musician, natural born, came out of New Orleans, was just, there was a big joke about him is that his neighbors, they always saw him leaving and coming back with a briefcase, but they never knew he played trumpet because they never heard it. He never practiced. He was such a natural musician. I mean, that's a very high compliment. Thanks, you're my buddy. I guess maybe you're supposed to say that, but I mean, he just is. I heard him do so many amazing things, with Patrick Williams' big band or with the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra, and one of his most famous trumpet solos was "The River" with John Williams. I mean, just an incredible solo that he nailed take after take after take after take, and they had so many great takes to pick from for the final version for that movie. But then we'd sit down, I'd hear him with Patrick Williams' big band, and he would sit down and he would just kill it, improvising and changes and just the most beautiful melodic, just everybody in the room smiled after he played every single time. And he just was, he was a musician's musician, if that makes sense. He really was the tippity top. I learned a lot from him. He really was helpful to me early on. Believe it or not, I'll never forget this moment. One of the first, under the wing moment I had with him is we were doing a party at Seth MacFarlane's house, who is the creator of Family Guy, American Dad, and the Orville that we do now, and so many amazing things. But he was having these Christmas parties, and he would hire the Family Guy Orchestra to be there. And anyways, he pulls me aside. We're just kind of, having a drink and waiting to do our next set of epic orchestral music for Seth MacFarlane and his friends. And he said, "Well, my boy," which was kind of one of his famous sayings. He said, "Well, my boy, what are you doing in February?" And I was, at that point, I wasn't really working all that much, And he said, "Well, I think you should join us in the Academy Awards." And, him and Rick Baptist and Warren had both vouched for me, and they needed another trumpet player for the Academy Awards. That's the first time I did it. And he just gave me a big hug, and I don't think I ever wanted to let go. I was like so thankful, but so many players in town. They have great stories about Warren. He just was he was an incredible musician, like I said, incredible trumpet player, and we all continue to look up to him. Amazing guy.
Brought to you by CineConcerts.